Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this EAP on connected communities. First of all, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Anslow and Councillor Jelly, with Councillor McGee acting as a substitute.
Thank you. I have the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of May 2023. Is everybody happy for me to sign those as a true record? Thank you very much. And right, we have one item on the agenda this morning, which is a presentation on the opportunities of emerging technologies. So I'm going to hand over to Guy Holloway.
Chair, thank you very much. And say my name is Guy Holloway. I'm the Council's Assistant Chief Executive. And what I wanted to do is to take members of the EAP through a presentation, Chair, on the impact of emerging technologies. And I'm going to particularly focus in on artificial intelligence and what artificial intelligence means in general terms, but also for the Council. And also look at our approach and some of the considerations for the Council going forwards. And I'll apologise now, I'm going to keep this fairly base level because people will have different understandings of the technology. But I think in order to help get a discussion going around that, which is the real sort of the aim of the presentation, Chair, is to stimulate some discussion. I wanted to kind of start off with some basics, but also some things that we know. So some of this might feel like it's a walk down memory lane, but I think it's just to get us all into the same place. So, Chair, I shall start off now. So in terms of what I was going to cover, I wanted to go through... Thank you. I forgot I'd got the clicker. I wanted to go through just some context by way of introduction. I wanted to focus on some of the key emerging technologies. There might be a debate about how emerging some of these are. Some of them have emerged and are in place, but I would say they're still emerging in terms of how we use them and how we benefit from them. I also wanted to look at some of the potential opportunities for the Council, and what I'll do, Chair, I'll caveat that now, and I'll caveat it again, potential opportunities. I'm not suggesting in this presentation that we adopt the technologies for what I'm outlining in the presentation. They are things for discussion. They're things that we would see or likely to see the industry considering in the months ahead and the years ahead. But I wanted to kind of I wanted to highlight some of those areas just to get people thinking and thinking about the sort of the benefits that we could get out of it. I also wanted to look at some of the barriers to change, what our potential next steps could be, and also then facilitate a question and discussion. So, Chair, thank you. So, basically, just a reminder, really, and this graph isn't to scale in terms of time. That first element in terms of language and the development of early tools took, many tens of thousands of years for humans to kind of start to use technology and new communication methods. And then what we've seen is a number of revolutions over history in terms of civilizations forming and the birth of international trade, the birth of the Industrial Revolution around machines and the use of machines, and then the digital revolution and the birth of computing. And I was doing a bit of research, Chair, and just watching some of the old Tomorrow's World episodes, and there's a really interesting one, 1969, the future of banking, where they're actually basically showing the first chip and pin machine effectively at a checkout. It's a rather big unit that makes a phone call and someone pays using a card for a product in a shop. And if you look at it now, there's smartwatches, there's voice recognition, you go to a parking machine. If you look at electronic payments, it's everywhere. But it's not actually that long ago that this was brand new technology. And Tomorrow's World was actually raising the question. It was showing the actual clip. I can't show it for licensing reasons, Chair, I'm afraid, but the actual clip shows teams of clerks working in offices, shuffling checks and papers. And it's raising the question, well, what will be the impact on these staff in these banks as the introduction of new technology? And it shows a new computer room, which is actually a room probably 3 times the size of this room, full of big boxes, and says this is state-of-the-art technology that can replace a lot of these people. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because what we've seen in the industry is, yes, actually a lot of people have been replaced, but likewise it's also opened up whole new industries around, if you look at the Big Bang in the stock exchange and just how now stockbroking and trading is distributed globally, not just in banks in central London. and you look at just some of the way that commerce has changed as a result of that. However, what I am very aware of, Chair, is any discussion around the impact of emerging technologies does raise that question around the impact on staff, the impact on how we do things. So I wanted to be upfront about that to start with, but I think there were some good examples in the history of where revolution has actually changed things, but actually there can be some real good that comes out of that as well in terms of society and the benefits and just actually how we can benefit from those new technologies. And then actually what I've put on here is we're now going through the next kind of information revolution, really driven by the speed and the power of computers and their ability to crunch through huge sums of data in very short spaces of time. And I'll come on and say a little bit more about that in a moment. But what this is leading to is this sort of next revolution around artificial intelligence. And that's something that I really wanted to focus on in this presentation, Chair. But what I wanted to do is to say this is nothing new. There have been a lot of revolutions in the past, and each of those have their own implications, benefits, and downsides as well. Chair, I'm going to caveat this by saying I'm going to say I've got two of probably the most boring slides you're ever going to have seen, so I do apologise. Well, yes, thank you. I will take that as a compliment. But so examples of recent disruptive technology. I mean, a transistor. It doesn't get much more exciting than that. However, it did make a massive difference. The ability to move from into the binary sphere of doing calculations and to start to miniaturize devices had a massive impact. And I think a lot of us actually, not all, but a lot of us will actually remember sort of how this technology has transformed things like the transistor radio and those type of things. Actually, it's within our life period to actually have seen some of these technologies coming in, particularly this next one. I remember when I was Chair, when I was a young lad, probably it was in the, I think it was the late 70s, my parents were in probably something that isn't done now, but they were in a babysitting circle. And one of the babysitters was a professor from Cambridge University. And the first thing he did was rearrange all the furniture in the house, which I thought even as a 7-year-old I thought was a rather unusual thing to do. But then he showed me a small wafer, and it was a silicon chip. And he said to me, this, in your lifetime, is going to absolutely transform your world and what you do. And he explained a little bit how it worked. A lot of it was over my head, but it stuck in my mind just how excited he was around this small thing, smaller than the fingertip, but just how he was enthusing about what a difference it was going to make. And that's how recent and how new this technology is. And then we've also seen the World Wide Web. I remember, and I'm sure many of us in the room will as well, I actually went on a training course to learn about what the World Wide Web was. And that was in the late 90s. So it wasn't actually that long ago. And I remember there being a lot of debate around actually it's just an online magazine, isn't it? It's not really going to make much difference. It's just like a posh Argos catalogue. But actually the ability to transact 24/7, to move data around, it's absolutely transformed what we do. And it's brought downsides as well. It's opened up new realms of cyber criminality, bullying, copyright issues. So it's not all rosy, but actually in terms of the impact it's had on society, I don't think there's any doubt that it's been massive. Chair, again, another exciting photograph. Apologise. Sort of battery technology, again, something that's been very disruptive in a positive way. It wasn't that long ago that Elon Musk brought his Tesla Roadster car out, and it really caused a massive shock in industry, and we saw manufacturers rushing to get their equivalent, and a lot of us now will either drive electric vehicles or will know people who have. But also we've seen this council, along with other councils, introducing electric vehicles into their fleet. And as that technology progresses, it actually does start to provide some solutions to some of the climate problems that we're facing. So battery technology really is quite revolutionary. And the reason why I'm demonstrating these is that they all come together. These things aren't operating in silos. They're together actually have the potential to make a huge difference to the way that we operate. The smartphone, if you look at the power that's in your smartphone, it probably it's a multiple of that computer we saw on that Tomorrow's World programme, which took up a room three times the size of this. I mean, your smartphone probably does that significantly more. And actually, the smartphone is a really good example of where AI technology has been mainstreamed without us really knowing it. If you've got a smartphone that reads your face, it's using artificial intelligence, it's using neural networks to be able to understand your facial recognition. If you've got a more modern phone, it might even put videos together for you of events over the last year or last month. Again, AI technology is looking at the photographs, it's looking at faces, it's looking at information, it's serving that up. So I think what I'm trying to say here, Chair, is actually, whether we like AI or not, it is embedded already in our daily lives. And it is something that is developing and progressing. And so actually starting to understand how we make some conscious choices as a council, start to benefit from this technology, is actually quite a relevant and important consideration. This is an example of, a really basic example of augmented reality. You may have heard of it, the ability to use your smartphone or an iPad to look at the real world and to superimpose information on that real world. And, can you imagine at the moment, if there's a planning application, a resident can go online and they can look at plans, and the quality of those plans really reflect the information that's been submitted. Imagine if they could stand in the street, hold a smartphone up and actually see the development in situ, and then be able to comment on that plan from that visualisation. One of the areas where augmented reality is being used really well is in areas of training. So I know a company that we've been liaising with just about how we can benefit from the technology, uses it for fire training. And to be able to hold your phone up and to actually see what your building looks like in a fire actually can help to bring more realism to evacuation procedures. And that's just one example. There are many where augmented reality can help with training. You may have seen, some of you, if you shop for clothes, you can actually superimpose the clothes on yourself using your phone to see what you'd look like before you buy them. Again, it's an interesting concept. Could you imagine a housing tenant who we might ask them to do some basic maintenance on something, to be able to use an augmented reality to supplement some of the guidance that we provide? All sorts of implications, all sorts of opportunities. Chair, I've got a question. Does anyone know what this is? I'm sure someone will do. It's not a chandelier, although it does look a little bit like one. It's a quantum computer. I know I did say there was going to be some slides that weren't the most exciting, but again, quantum computing is a relatively emergent technology. It will no doubt, along with AI, transform the future in terms of how information is utilised. Basically, it's computing at a very cold level. It's using quantum mechanics, and it completely rewrites the way that data is used. Up until now, computers have worked from digital, binary, ones and zeros. What quantum computing does is turns that on its head, and it basically, there are no ones and zeros. Its ability to crunch through huge volumes of data are significant. And I think when we see AI and quantum computing coming together on a mass scale, that is where we're really going to see some changes in some step change in what's happening going forwards in terms of information. So to get us down to the real world, Chair, now. So where have we seen? So we've obviously all seen computing make a big impact to our work. I remember the first email system coming in at work, and the memos quickly stopped, but then the emails started piling up, and we all know that feeling now when you go into your inbox. The World Wide Web, as I said, being very transformative. Just the ability for our residents to be able to access services 24/7 online had a massive impact on the way we do things, and also a massive impact on the ability for residents to be able to report things at times that suit them. And I think the council, paying your car tax as an example that I often use is, I remember used to wait in the queue at the post office. You used to have to remember that you've got your insurance certificate and everything with you, whereas now you can go on and in less than 5 minutes you can renew your your car tax online, which is much easier, and actually much easier for the agency that provides it, because they can do all sorts of information checks behind the scenes to make sure that that insurance document actually really does exist. It's not something that's counterfeit or copied. National Address Gazetteer, it started off being called the NLPG, the National Land and Property Gazetteer. Again, I can remember when that came in back in the late 90s, I believe, which was assigning property reference numbers to all properties that allow services to be much smarter in terms of how information is transacted around property sales. Again, you won't have seen it much, but when you put your postcode into a computer and it pulls your address details up, there's a lot of transactions happening behind the scenes to make sure that happens smoothly. Optical character recognition, otherwise known as OCR. So, some organisations will have a post room where they've got people reading bits of mail and pointing it in different directions. Some businesses will use optical character recognition to actually read that mail and then to actually understand where it needs to go and point it in the right direction. And again, that's something that it's still emerging, but when you fuse it with AI, it's not only about the bit of hardware reading the letter, it's about the AI understanding it and thinking, yeah, that's definitely housing benefits, or that's definitely going through to the planning area. And then robotic process control. I won't say too much about that other than you can automate a lot of processes. So things that are being done in a routine fashion where humans might be inputting data into a spreadsheet, the same data day in, day out. Actually, you can train computers to do that, to actually update that information for you, and you can free those resources up to do different things. So in terms of the kind of technologies that are around, Chair, I'm sure a lot of you will know a lot of these type of things. So augmented reality I've spoken about, artificial intelligence, which we'll come on and say a little bit more about in a moment. I've touched on quantum computing, self-driving vehicles. Only the other day I was in Tesco, and to my amusement, a cleaning device trundled past me and turned the corner, and off it went. And it's actually cleaning the shop in real time. And it means that their cleaning staff can then go and do more intricate areas. But again, it's just an example of how technology is being utilised. We know very well that in this area, distribution is quite a big industry. And we also know quite well that a lot of that distribution, a lot of those buildings have got robots moving around, doing things, picking things from the shelves. And it's why when you go onto Amazon and you go to buy something, it can tell you whether it's got it in stock, and it can tell you when it's going to get delivered. And I suppose the challenge here is, where can us as a council benefit from those technologies? I'm not suggesting we've got exactly the same type of thing, but can a customer, when they book a housing repair, actually understand when that repair is going to take place and how long it will take? And do we know when it's been done and what the customer experience was, and get that actual feedback? And I think there's lots of opportunities around that in terms of how we transact with customers. So I wasn't going to go into detail on all of these things, Chair. I'm going to zero in a little bit on artificial intelligence, but I think the reason why, this was the original ask for coming along today, and I wanted to put a little bit of wider context on artificial intelligence, because it is one of a whole range of technologies that are out there that need to be used together in order to work out how we can benefit. But a common industry way of describing how artificial intelligence works is using the Matryoshka model, or the Russian doll model, where machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, neural networks is a subset of machine learning, and then you've got deep learning. And artificial intelligence has been around for quite a long time, and all it is really is an algorithm. And I'll let you into a secret, Chair, and a lot of you may know this. Artificial intelligence isn't actually that intelligent. It's only as clever as the algorithm that's been put together. What there is there's a lot of clever people putting algorithms together, and there's a lot of technology that are crunching through a lot of data really quickly, which gives the impression that it's intelligent, but it's not. It actually can fall over. And I think that's a really important point to make, because if we look at something like ChatGPT, which you may have heard of, which is a chatbot, it uses artificial intelligence. Just to give you a flavour, Chair, that was introduced to the public at the end of November 2022. By January 2023, there were 100 million subscribers to ChatGPT. I mean, that is a phenomenal growth of a technology in terms of the sign-up. And if anyone's used ChatGPT, you can, I've got one on my phone. It's just a little app that you can download free of charge. And it's really, I would encourage you to have a go with it. It's really quite good fun. You can put questions in. I asked it some questions yesterday evening, Chair. So I just asked it. There's a whole number of things I could have asked it, but I first of all started off by saying hello, and it instantly came back and said, "Hello, Guy. How can I assist you today?" And I said, "Well, tell me, what do you know about North Northamptonshire?" And it then went on to say, "Well, North Northamptonshire, also known as North Northants, is a region located," and it goes on and explains it. I then asked it, "What can you tell me about North Northamptonshire Council?" And it tells me. Now, I stopped there, Chair, because I was going to ask it, what can it tell me about myself? But I decided actually I wouldn't go there. But you can ask it all sorts of questions. And what's really impressive is the speed at which this technology operates. You know, it's real time, it's pulling the information out. And the way that this open AI architecture is working is it's gathering data globally that's available on the internet. And it has that information in its database. And between you and that data are some very clever algorithms that are trained to appear human. And that process of training has involved humans to put inputs in, to look at the inputs that are coming out, and to fine-tune those inputs. So it's got very good at looking like it's human, but now and then it does trip up. So now and then it will pull on the wrong data set. Now and then it will get things wrong. And I suppose one of the reasons why I was really, really keen and really excited about doing this session is I've seen, just amongst my colleagues, amongst my peers, inside and outside of work, the excitement that artificial intelligence and ChatGPT has generated, and I can see a debate around how can we use this technology to benefit society, to benefit our customers. So I suppose what I wanted to do in this presentation, Chair, is to get the balance of really exciting stuff. It is transformative, but let's be really careful, because within those AI models, and I'll come on in my next slide. Just going back, the difference, by the way, between deep learning on the end there is just the level at which deep learning through AI goes. It goes into a much deeper level. And I think the way I would describe this is if you look at a photograph, artificial intelligence will look at a photograph and it will say, that looks like a photograph of a pizza. You think, that's good. So it will serve you up photos of a pizza, just to make you, anyone who was at full council last night will know that. It makes you hungry with all the discussion of food, but it will serve you up a picture of a pizza. Machine learning can go through all of your photos and it will say, show me all the photos of a pizza, and it will pull out the photos of a pizza. When you get into neural networks will say, show me the pizza that's got pineapple on it, show me the pizza that might not have tomato on it. Can you separate those pictures, and can you separate them and distinguish them for me? Deep learning will look at it and say, is that pizza going to make me gain weight? Is it going to cost more? Is it going to change my lifestyle? Deep learning is going to look at all the facts around the brands of pizza. It can go into all of the depth, the detail behind that, and it will tell you actually whether it thinks that particular type of pineapple is better than another brand. And it can go into real depth. Now that's, I know it's a bit of a quirky example. Just think about, and I'm going to be really cautious now, I'm not saying for 1 minute we should do this, but you could see how if you've got processes that might involve making decisions around school places or around care or around other things, you could see the appeal for thinking, oh, how could we introduce technology into this? But you can also see the risks in terms of doing that. And there are lots of it. So an example where AI and deep learning is being used is in the healthcare sector with doing pre-screening for cancer checks. And what some companies are doing are basically taking, with permission of those people who are having their, I had a scan, I had an MRI scan a couple of months ago, and I was asked the question, am I happy for my data to go into a deep learning tool at Cambridge University? I was only too happy to, but I could see some people wouldn't be happy to do that. And the reason for that is it's looking for whether there are, whether there's any cancerous cells. And there'll be consultants trained and radiographers trained looking at that scan. But what the industry knows is a tool that's looking at hundreds of thousands and potentially millions of scans over a period of time actually might be really good at spotting something that someone may miss. Really interesting program on Radio 4 last week where they were talking about the ethics of this technology, and the hospital that were being interviewed said, actually, we don't supplement, we don't replace humans with this technology, we're using it to support them. And so they come at the end of the chain, and we just use it as a way of saying, how effective is this technology, and have we missed something? But it is actually, the research has shown that it is extremely effective at looking at huge volumes of data and identifying issues that humans can quite easily miss. Computers don't get tired. They don't go out on the town the night before. They're not off sick. You do have the blue screen, and they do go wrong. But when they're working, they work quite tirelessly to perform their task. Chair, moving on, I mentioned some ethical issues there, actually. And I think this is, again, I just wanted to show a little bit of the wiring below neural networks and artificial intelligence, just so we know what we're dealing with when we're thinking about how we use it going forwards. Clearly, any artificial intelligent model will have input, so information that you're putting into the model, and it will have information that comes out of the model, outputs. But what artificial intelligence does, and in particular deep learning does, is it will apply weights to that information. It will apply bias, and it will apply thresholds. So the pizza analogy I gave, there'll be humans saying, pineapple isn't as popular as some other products on pizza, and they will be programming that artificial intelligence. And what research has shown is, although the industry is trying very hard to avoid bias, bias naturally creeps in. Because if you've got humans training and shaping those algorithms, they will automatically have bias there. So again, just something to be aware of, and something to have in the back of your mind. Artificial intelligence is brilliant in terms of what it can do, and it can appear very human, but actually is also not that clever and does have some downsides. Here are some examples. I did say I would caveat this. I'll caveat it again. I'm not saying we should do this, but I'm saying that there's some exciting opportunities, and we could think about it. So in the morning when I come to work, there's one set of traffic lights that I will sit at, and it always seems to go red when I get close to it, and no one else seems to be going through the traffic lights. So I always think there's got to be a smarter way of doing this. Artificial intelligence, could provide a really good solution to that. I know it's been trialled in areas, but a camera that can look and can see and can distinguish between a cyclist, a pedestrian, a car, it can look at the traffic volumes, and it can real-time adjust the traffic light. Now, you can see if it goes wrong, it could be catastrophic, but at the same time, some clever technology could actually really improve the transport network. And I've got no doubt that those people working in transport will be looking hard and trialling and doing all sorts of things to understand how this technology can assist. Road maintenance, you'll be probably familiar with something called LiDAR, which is it's using a laser to see around it. So it's what a lot of automated vehicles use. They will use radar, but they'll also use a laser to build up a visual image in the mind of the computer to see the world around it. And what LiDAR can do is it can be used to spot potholes. It can see the surface of roads. And so you can see if you've got a fleet of vehicles driving around, could it be collecting data about the road services? Could it be scheduling in pothole repairs early? Now, there are companies that have put software together that use your mobile phone to do that. And what they actually, and I smiled when I heard this, I'm sure you will, they actually detect the bump of your phone when you go over a pothole. Well, I would argue that's probably a bit late, and most people will swerve to avoid it. But if you've got technology that can actually see the road, can build an image up, and can report that information back, then again, it's really beneficial. Efficiency of waste collection. We've got vehicles driving around collecting waste. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure those rounds are really effective, to save fuel, to save time. The deep thinking that AI can do that much more effective. And what it can do is it can say, well, actually, the weather today is going to be this. Actually, the traffic conditions, picking up GPS data is this. Dynamic route changes to adjust, and it will know that certain streets are narrow. And again, the kind of models that can come out that can actually help us to optimize the way that we're doing things. could be of massive benefit. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we do this. What I think you'll find is industry will solve these problems as we go forwards. They'll be looking at these technologies, so there'll be early adopters for these type of things. I'm just giving a bit of an insight. As if I go back to that thing where I mentioned about the first computer landing on my desk and the memo stopping and the email starting, actually what's the next step for us in terms of what's happening? What's that next change and how does it affect us? These are just some ideas. The effectiveness of customer services. I know, because there are members in this room who will have emailed me on this, that actually when you go on our website, one of the common things is I can't find information on, or I'm trying to find this, or I phone customer services up and I can't get through to the right person. Again, artificial intelligence, if you look at Bing, which is Microsoft's search platform, they've stolen a bit of the limelight in that they've actually moved their search engine over to their artificial intelligence engine. So they actually moved faster than some of the other big search engines, and they're providing a more detailed, more in-depth experience in terms of their search. Now, Google and the other competitors are right there. They've got products, and we're seeing, if you go into your Gmail, you'll start to see now that actually Gmail starts to write the email response for you before you've actually written it. It's really clever bit of tech, and we're going to start to see this emerging more. Again, brings in all sorts of ethical issues depending on where you're doing that. But Microsoft, when you put PowerPoint presentations together, PowerPoint now suggests, don't worry, it hasn't done it on this, I can assure you, but it can suggest the layout and the design of the slides for you. It can help to shape that. So the effectiveness of customer services, can imagine customers actually going onto our web chat and asking questions and getting information back about how they can contact a service, or why something is delayed, where is their housing repair. You can also see the issues with it as well, that if you're using open architecture and that data is being put into the public domain, where are the issues around data protection and around ethics? Where does that line end? So there's some real big questions here. But as a rudimentary level, if the information's on a website, having a smarter engine that can find that information and serve it to the customer in a way that actually feels quite human. I was having another example, Chair, if I may. I was having an interesting discussion with my bank through a chatbot. It wasn't going very well. And I ended it by saying, I'm really not happy with the experience, but I think I'm just going to go to another bank. Goodbye. And it said, goodbye. I thought, well, great, okay. It was almost like telling me it was time to go. But it heard the word goodbye, and it thought, I need to say goodbye back. So it wasn't able to pick up the nuances of a frustrated customer, but it was able to do some basic transactions. The AI technology is able to go into more detail and start to understand, actually, is that customer frustrated? Do I need to escalate that? So some potential opportunities there, and again, industries are already using this in their AI. That's what this ChatGPT product does. I mentioned post rooms and email management, improved information for decision making. Really interesting point here. It's pretty well known in the industry that between 80 and 90% of the information that an organisation has is unstructured. By unstructured, I mean actually there's no structure to it. It exists in Excel spreadsheets or in systems that aren't open. There's no keys that are referencing that data together. So actually, to flip that round, there's a lot of data that organisations have that are not really serving a wider benefit to the organisation. Artificial intelligence does have the ability to be able to look at these different data sets and start to make connections between them. You've heard of big data and the whole debate around that. Google got into an interesting place with the NHS not too long ago around big data, so there are big ethical issues around how big data is used, but there are opportunities for how can we wire together the data that the organisation has, and indeed its partners have. However, data governance and other issues will be critical, and I'll come on to that. I was going to stop there with the examples. It's just I've already mentioned healthcare, where there's a lot of work understandably taking place in terms of how artificial intelligence can help. So some considerations, Chair. There will be more. I'm just putting these out there as a kind of a starting point and as a kind of like something to filter through, because I do, worry is the wrong word, but natural concern when I see people get very excited about the technology. I think, yeah, we should be, but also we need to just stop and think really carefully about how it's used. Ethical considerations, really, really important. So, actually, we need to make sure that we're using things ethically. Do our customers understand that they're dealing with a human or a bit of software? So it's about being open. governance. How do we control it as an organisation? If we've got a supplier that puts together a product, actually, are we aware of that, the use of that technology? And if we've got service areas getting excited about it, do we have the mechanisms in place to understand what that service area is doing and decision points? And making sure that members are in the loop, that members are happy with how we're moving forwards. Bias and accuracy, I've already touched on that. If we've got AI in the future making any decisions, well, is it helping or is it hindering? Is it biased in terms of what it's doing? Whole issues of data ownership and data protection. I think you're going to see a lot of this in the news in the coming months. There's a bit of software called DALI, and that basically is really clever, actually. And you've probably seen it on the news. It can generate artwork. You can put into a prompt on the screen, something that you want a bit of artwork from, and it will give you back a really clever, really brilliant bit of artwork, as if an artist has produced it for you in front of you, but it does it in seconds. Very impressive, and I think it's one of the things that's really excited people and thought, wow, this is really impressive. It's worried the art and the creative industries, not least because they're thinking, well, actually, hang on a second, you were paying a designer to do this, and now this bit of software is doing it. But also, the way it works, and let's be really clear about it, is it's looking at data globally. It's looking at anything that's scanned in on the internet, and it's saying, I'm going to take a bit of that, and I'm going to change it, or I'm going to keep a bit of that, and I'm going to put it together. And so you might actually see a bit of artwork that's the fusion of many other bits of artwork that people have created. And what that's doing is that's going to create I'm sure, a very big legal case around copyright and around intellectual property. And so again, being an early adopter in that technology is something that I think we want to be really careful about. Very exciting. And you can imagine if you'd got a museum or a library that's got lots of pictures that it's scanned in, and it might want to find things, you can understand how that could be a really good tool for actually finding things and categorising things, and then doing all sorts of wonderful analysis. But again, at the same time, there are some risks. So that data ownership and data protection, and then cyber security. Again, I mean, this is really interesting. One of the ways that cyber criminals, and I'm not going to say anything in this meeting, Chair, that's not known to cyber criminals, so I'm not giving anything away. But social engineering. So quite a common way that we get cyber attacks is for someone to try and mimic one of our email addresses and then try and pretend to be someone and say, oh, I just need a favour, please, or can you do a password check? And the whole idea is to try and look as convincing as possible. AI takes that to a whole new level, because not only can it look convincing, it can have a dialogue with you. And if it's read your emails and it knows you, it can even answer questions about yourself. And so it does create whole new realms around how we actually put security procedures in place. And do I know that it's Councillor Lloyd Bundy contacting me, or is it his synthetic model, and vice versa? And joking aside, actually, when you start to think about it, the quantum computing model that I showed you, just the way that quantum computing works, and I won't go into detail, but happy to if anyone wants me to. The way it works is standard technology today could take hundreds of years to crack a code at what's called 256-bit encrypted using a military-grade encryption technology. It could take many years. Quantum computing could potentially solve it overnight. Because the ability for it to do huge calculations, and that will raise all sorts of questions. In the wrong hands, that technology can unscramble a lot. Now, there's a whole race going on to actually use quantum computing to put new encryption methods in. So there's going to be a whole new realm of data security coming out going forwards, and it is a race to get that right. So, Chair, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. What I wanted to do now, to a discussion, just to say, bring it all back, zip back to Northamptonshire Council now. We've done the wider thinking. So we've got a diverse ICT estate, and we've got a developing ICT strategy. So obviously through that we will consider how AI and new technologies can benefit us. We are already benefiting from it, whether we like it or not, because companies like Microsoft and Google are utilising this. They're helping our customers and they're helping us. But there'll be decisions around how we take that further in areas. As an organisation, the sort of things that the corporate leadership team, myself, will be thinking about is, what is our digital culture as an organisation? How much are we embracing these new technologies? How far do we want to go? How far can it help us? and what is our priority path. What upskilling do we need to do and reskilling do we need to do in order to be able to enable AI, depending on how technologies come out. What is our approach? Is it a structured approach or is it an emergent approach? So do we have a very structured, planned approach about how we adopt technologies, or do we go for the kind of more, actually let's just see what emerges and make sure we've just got the right skills to be able to adopt it at that time? And then in terms of resources, we need to think about the skills that we've got, the capacity that we've got to be able to onboard that technology. We need to understand the investment that will be made, but importantly, the savings and the benefits that can come out of that investment. You know, I'd argue if there are not financial benefits and really clear customer benefits, then actually we need to think carefully about whether we make that investment. And last, and by no means least on that kind of list of considerations, Chair, priority, risk and choices. And that risk element is really, really important. You know, that early adopter, it's just making sure that we're managing that risk carefully and that we're understanding what the priority and making conscious choices about how we move forwards. I've only got a couple of slides left, Chair, so I'm nearly there. Some assumptions. Well, look, I was going to put some assumptions out there that I think it's safe to assume that artificial intelligence will continue to grow. You may have seen there was a conference in Europe recently around getting in some ethical frameworks to make sure that artificial intelligence is used in a way that is ethical. So I think there'll be a lot of debate around that, but I think it's unstoppable. Artificial intelligence can now write its own software. So yeah, this isn't going to go away. I think what we need is more cases in daily life to help understand it, to help demystify some of the myths which there will be around what can happen. I think AI can be good for the council and can be good for residents, but I think we need to be cautious about that. I think it will take time for suppliers to invest, to learn, and also to fail. I think there'll be failures as well with suppliers. ChatGPT had its own failure a couple of months ago where it accidentally exposed its user details in some of its chat responses. And the problem was actually quite big. So technology is young and, could you imagine we wouldn't want to go there if that was our customer data that it was doing it with. So, that thing around let industry fail, let it learn, and then we can look at adoption. My last point in considerations is early adoption is always risky. So it's just being really cautious about that. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, and doesn't mean we should choose those areas that can add value. Chair, this next steps really will lead into a discussion where I will keep my mouth closed for a while and let members hold the debate, which is really important. But what I was saying here is we need to sort of continue to build our skills and understanding of artificial intelligence and of emerging technologies and those technologies that are new. We need to make sure we've got a structured approach for its evaluation. So we're not driven by emotion or driven by hype. We're driven by a clear head, an understanding of the facts, that we consider our approach to innovation as a council. And I think what I would say on that is innovation isn't ring-fenced to new technology. I'll give an example. I won't say the company name. A really big manufacturer of printing devices. Really interesting. Some organisations have got big departments with... I was at, a couple of years ago, I was at BT's Innovation Centre in Ipswich. Really fascinating place. Some really, really big brains, some big technology. But it just kind of made me think it's happening in a kind of like a bubble. Those businesses that get this right are actually getting innovation down at right down throughout the whole organisation. I think that the people who can really come up with innovative ideas about how we can improve waste are the people who are actually working on the refuse lorry and the customers that they're serving, as well as those people elsewhere in the business. The people who can come up with ideas, so that printer company, they didn't have a massive research and development department. They spoke to their engineers who spoke to their customers. And their engineers said, I'll tell you what will sell a good printer. It's the ability to do X, Y, and Z. So I think culturally, it's just not losing sight. This isn't something that happens in a silo, in a bubble, or down a corridor with the word innovation on it. It's something that needs to happen culturally across the organisation. So I think we just need to think about how we mainstream our approach, but without losing control of some of the bigger decisions around some of those more emergent technologies that we take on. Chair, I'm going to leave it there. I've gone through quite a lot of information, but hopefully that tees it up for a bit of discussion. And I really hope there's something new in there or something that was insightful, because I've also gone over some basics as well. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Guy. Any observations from anybody? Has Guy blinded you with science? Elliot?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I had a few points to make, actually, so stop me if you get bored. I'm obviously far too young to have seen a lot of these innovations that you guys have seen. I remember watching a video that Bill Gates was being interviewed about the World Wide Web, probably in black and white, to be honest. And the guy was saying to him, is this really going to be as, like you said, it's just an online magazine, surely. And he said, no, this is seriously going to go on and be successful. And he's right. I mean, my concern about the World Wide Web is the one that's probably shared between all of us, is that it does share negativity as quickly as it shares positivity, and in some cases faster now. As a council, as we look to develop our innovations, we need to be really careful about that. Use your example about the traffic lights guy. I mean, the obvious concern there is the hacking. Should I turn this light green so that Guy can go? Well, actually, let's hack this and turn all the lights green so everybody goes and causes a bit of a catastrophe. I also think with AI, actually, a lot of what it's doing is replacing what we're doing rather than improving what we're doing. So, I can ask AI, how many times have Manchester United won the Premier League? And it will tell me in an instant, but actually, I could have got that anyway, and I could have read that in a book, or I could have asked Lloyd, and that, I think, encourages people to be insular, and I think potentially there's some other issues there that potentially people are sitting and chatting to their PCs rather than sitting and chatting to individuals and their friends, and I think that's a big concern. I mean, I don't think me raising concerns are going to stop these things going forward. As you say, Guy, I think it's a bit of a charge now, and I think we need to try and embrace it where we can. But again, to use your example with the frustrated customers, AI has the potential to say, oh, this guy's frustrated, let's escalate that. But actually, we already do that. If I'm on the phone to a customer at work and he's frustrated, I don't need to escalate it. I can look to help him immediately. So again, I don't think AI necessarily improves a lot of things. I think it just does what we already do. And with regards to ChatGPT, again, I think it's the insular thing that concerns me. I think you're right about ChatGPT. It's not stopping. But I think it encourages us to be lazy no longer now that we pick up a book and go and find something. I was thinking recently about the famous line that your maths teacher would say to you, what have I got to do this, miss? Oh, you're not always going to have your calculator with you, and well, now you do. But, a few weeks ago, I was sitting with my daughters trying to do their maths homework with them, and I had to remind myself how to do long multiplication, or how do you work out what 3/7 of whatever is, and I think it's really quite damaging for us. I think there's a lot to be said for the old-fashioned methods. And it does have its limitations, ChatGPT. 6 months ago, I asked it how to make my wife happy, and it still hasn't come back to me with an answer.
Richard.
Thank you, Lloyd. I have to say I'm quite surprised because, of course, Elliot is a lot younger than me, but he's expressing concerns that I would also share. Everybody knows I'm an accountant. Caution is my watchword. Cybersecurity wears the hell out of me. I don't bank on the phone, for example. I'm not in any way involved in any shape of social media, not even WhatsApp. I steer away from all this sort of stuff. And it worries me that if we are an early adopter, I know, Guy, you didn't say that we should be, but if we were to be, we might leave ourselves exposed. And anyway, quite apart from anything else, sure, this is tinkering at the margins. The real high-value items which this council is involved in are children's services and adult social care. And I know that the Children's Trust is £7 million in the red for, I'm sure, great reasons. How can AI help that? I would suggest it probably can't. So I just wonder whether, I'm not for a minute suggesting we don't look at this, but it's not going to solve the fundamental issues which this council faces, I would suggest.
Chair, I did say I'd let members have a chat. That's a really good question. And either now or later, I'd like to come back to that, if that's okay.
Yeah. I must admit, as far as early adopters goes, many years ago, I had one of the first speaking cars. And it used to be very, very nice. It used to have in fact, we used to describe it as the Maggie Thatcher voice, telling you what to do. But it was actually dropped as part of the product because a car was sitting upside down in a ditch, and it came out with warning, low road temperature. and they thought that was a little bit late. So there are times when things do work and things don't. Oh, you got one that doesn't work. Do you want to? He did it on purpose.
Guy, Guy, thank you for that. I think that's extremely interesting, this whole debate. And, you know, I do use banking on my phone. I use all this sorts of stuff because I think it makes life easier. I really, really do. But that's not saying there are risks. We know they are. We had a data breach in this council just not long ago. The staff were very concerned and contacted me. So we're right to look at the risks. But I do think there's some great opportunities moving forward to make our role, our services, a lot better, a lot quicker, more responsive. Customers are more happy. I think there's great opportunities there. Matt, you said about taking your time, because I do think as it emerges, it'll become less costlier, because at the beginning when these things come out and you want to take things on board, it's usually quite costly to bring that on board. And as you go on, the costs drop, etc., the insurance costs, the risk insurances, etc. So I think we should be looking to put a business plan together, see where we can get the best benefits from AI. I certainly think we should be doing that, and not 5 years down the line. We should be looking at that now, and we don't have to take everything at once, but we can bring it in gently. If it's going to help the council become better, and then of course we've got to look at it. I do think that, you know, we are members of the LGA, and I'm sure that the local government association is doing a lot of work on this, and so there's places we can go to and get that support and help, see what's already working, what's not, etc. So I do think there's a lot of opportunities. But the most important thing for me is, how do we bring the staff and the customers along with that? We've got to make it simple, usable for them, friendly, easy, etc. And if we don't bring them, we don't manage that, and then we will spend a lot of money and not get the benefits. So there are risks, but I do think there's some great opportunities. And I look forward to future meetings and learning what we can bring aboard.
Wendy.
Thank you, Guy. That was very interesting. I certainly learned some. I didn't know about quantum computing. I think there's a lot of advantages and opportunities in the future for the council, but I'm just concerned we need to make sure that we don't leave some people behind. I know it's not AI, but a couple of months ago I was in Marlborough just trying to park, and once you manage to find a space, there were at least a couple of people I met, and they couldn't pay for parking because they didn't have the app. And then there was one lady trying to download an app, and there's so many different parking apps. So I just think we need to be extremely careful that we don't leave some people behind, and make sure that there's always other ways of getting in contact or communicating. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's right. My attitude to technology, and as most people know, that's my life, is that technology is there to help you do what you're doing now, either better or more efficiently, or in a cleaner way. If it doesn't do that, if you have to worry about the technology, and you're not just pressing a button to switch it on, you've then got to go through a whole plethora of things to actually get something to work, then that is not assisting the user. What I would say is that the concept of that I noticed, that if AI can triage calls coming into a customer service department and then put it through to a human being, it does a job. Having said that, the other day, I was simply phoning a restaurant to book a meal, and I got through to an obvious artificial intelligence interface that asked me what I wanted to do. I told it. It then said, oh, for that, I'll have to put you through to a colleague, which basically meant I'm going to put you through to somebody who's human. The phone rang and rang and rang, and after about 5 minutes, I got an answer message saying, sorry, there's nobody here to answer your call at the moment. Please leave a message. And I thought, what's the point? Yep.
Thank you. What stage do you think AI is? Obviously, Northants, apart from the childcare problem we have, a recent one is obviously the Kettering Leisure Centre. If all the information of that company costs everything, is AI capable of pointing out what has been going wrong? In other words, making suggestions how the business could be run profitably? Because obviously, at this moment in time, you have large businesses with people at the top in the boardroom. They are running the whole business, but occasionally they fail. How do you see it in the future, once it's all the problems have been ironed out, to actually feed all that company's information in and come back with a, you should be running it in this particular manner? What's your feeling on that?
Chair, thank you. I won't make it specific to the example of business that you gave, but just in general terms, I mean, I don't think there's going to be any bit of software that's necessarily going to off the shelf do that. But in terms of businesses building up, there are already businesses that are using AI to do that, to look at. So I mentioned about the different distributed data that businesses have got. So artificial intelligence can predict, trends, consumer trends, to help make businesses more profitable. So supermarkets, the ability, if you look at supply chains, they make it. Tesco, one of the reasons why Tesco was so successful earlier on was through its club card. Wasn't necessarily just the loyalty that was shown to the club card, it was how Tesco were using the data from the club card to ensure that products were on the shelf, to ensure that people were targeted with the right information. So that was kind of like a basic level of how it's now becoming much, so if you let it, if I go on some social media sites, etc., it can learn the information that I'm interested in, and it can actually sell things to me if I want it to. And so businesses can start to capitalise on those opportunities. And absolutely, in terms of looking and saying, well, this financial data shows that this isn't profitable, it'll have the ability to do that. I think there'll always be human interaction in there to make judgments about it. There's some really good examples of some of the London banks using AI algorithms to make trades. They can work really, really well. The problem is they use logic or degrees of logic to make their decision. And unfortunately, financial markets aren't always logical. And so they can get short-footed. But businesses are already using it to make money. There's some really good examples of AI being used to come up with new products, brand new products, and product ideas. Things that people haven't thought of. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere near get in a situation where you'll just give it a business situation that you've got and say, how can we make it profitable? But I think, understanding, for example, and it goes back to the previous question about how could it be used for adult social care and children's services, and there's kind of like a common theme across here in terms of data usage. But where are your target audience? How do you connect to your target audience? How do you get information out to your target audience? What's that geographical service users likely to grow like in the future? What is the data telling us around their habits? And importantly, and this is where we'll start to see AI coming in, is what changes are happening, what changes to inputs are happening in an area have an impact in terms of the outputs. So the take-up of, if you're looking at how can we get more people to take up cycling, well, actually, the ability to put adverts out, to put information out, is it education in schools that has the most benefit? Is it around putting some adverts out on billboards or social media? The ability to look at that information and see what has an impact will help us to learn what works well. I don't think it'll be a golden bullet, but you can rest assured the advertising industries are already hot on this and looking at how this can work. I wanted to home in, if I may, though, Chair, specifically on this, the point about children's services and adult social care, because there are some examples of how councils and care providers are already starting to use technologies. I can't remember, it's one on the south coast. I won't say the name because I might get it wrong, but they've been doing some work around, and this is 3 or 4 years ago when they were doing this, around people with Alzheimer's in care homes. One of the big problems they've got is they were finding a lot of residents were wandering off, and they were trying to find them, and they were putting themselves at risk. And so they were actually using geotags, residents signing up to use them. A lot of people now have got iPhone watches or a smartphone, but using geotags to actually work out, are people going off from their normal pattern, are they going too far? Hewlett-Packard have done some work with a university. One of the problems the university had was they were losing students, and they said to Hewlett-Packard, look at our data and work out a way of reducing our reduction of students, the number of students who drop out of our courses. And they actually, the most reliable piece of data they found was an access control card reader on the main resources centre at the university. Because what they found was the earliest sign of a student disengaging was they stopped going to a particular building that had got some social interactions and had got some learning interactions, and they realised that as soon as they stopped going to that one door, there's a much higher chance they're going to drop out. And so they were able to intervene and to provide support and assistance to people who stopped using that door. Ethical considerations again, absolutely. But it shows you how data points, there might be something, who'd have thought of a card reader on a door could actually be as insightful. And that is where it could change the business model for the university. Because if they were losing 10% of their students and now they're only losing 2% of them, that could make a significant difference to their financial model. And I think it's thinking differently around what data sets do we have that could be a goldmine of information around capital investments that we're making in the longer term. We tend to make, as organisations, capital investment decisions on a shorter term, 4-year window, etc. Can we look ahead? What kind of predictive trends have we got going much further forwards around what kind of investments we need to make and what population growth will be like, and what is the emerging trend in terms of health inequalities, and what factors are we doing to change that? And I think this is where, going back to the point around actually AI is just doing what you can get already, what it does do is two things that I think are different to what it does at the moment. One, it can make interactions with computers feel much more human, and that can break down barriers with residents and consumers, and it will do, and it is doing, and I think it will continue to on a scary pace. I think the other thing it does, though, is it can look at vast sums of data and make predictions using predictive analytics. And again, I think we'll see much more. But the beverage industry has done this for years, haven't they? Using weather forecasting. I know someone who's works for InBev. The industry is driven by what the weather conditions are going to be like and what they think their sales are going to be. And they know that Coca-Cola sales quite literally fly off the shelf when you get some warm weather. So there's a whole industry around predicting that. But what are our comparisons? What are the predictive things that we need to be looking at going forward? I don't think we know the answer yet, but there will be, and there will be ways that it will impact on care, on social care, on education, in all walks. I just don't think we can see it yet, but it will be there. And we already know, for example, that if we can access, and we've got a really good head of business intelligence, Tom Barden, really insightful. He's done some presentations recently. Really, in terms of our emerging data strategy, just using existing technology is better to access our data is going to give us a lot of benefits going forwards. Throw in some technology that can go much deeper will add value to that. But it's just proceeding with caution, and hopefully that helps, Chair.
So at this moment in time, then, it possibly doesn't have the ability to say when a company is going into administration to do a turnaround on it.
Chair. Not that I'm not going to say no. Not that I'm aware of. I think the thing is, it goes back to the fact that the algorithms that are in place. It's OpenAI. It's an open architecture, which means it's free. Although it's like everything. And as Councillor McGee points out, it's not free, because actually if you want the best one, you've got to pay for it, and then there's the supply costs, there's all the other costs that go with it, the implementation costs. However, it is open source, so people can pull off that data and they can use it. So you will get businesses that will be shaping it, but I don't think there's a bit of software you can download to say how can you turn this business around. Although I'm sure AI will have a say on many things. Perhaps not the question about your wife, though.
So auditors and accountants are still okay. Okay, anything else? Anybody else? Any other comments? I must admit, I could talk for days on the subject. One of my subjects at university many years ago was man-machine interfaces, and that was fascinating. And you know, I'm talking about in the 70s now, and that was interesting. So we've moved on a lot from then. But, okay, thank you very much, Guy. Thank you.
Pleasure, Chair.
I think it would be useful at some point to look at some of the examples, and I do appreciate the problems we've had this morning with regard to that, but that's something. Okay, we should have all received a copy of the Executive Forward Plan. That's coming through. Really, it's more a case of, is there anything that anybody feels we should be putting more on the list of items for this EAP? I don't know, Adele, whether you want to suggest anything or talk through anything, or...
No, Chair. I think Guy had a suggestion, though. That helps after Councillor McGee.
I have a couple as well.
I can only read, but as I'm not a full member of this, I did ask Councillor Anslow what she would like me to suggest, and her email, and I'll read it for you, Chair, is: in the August Forward Plan, I would like the Greenway Strategy, the Culture, Heritage and Tourism Business Plan and the SEND Strategy to be discussed at appropriate scrutiny committees and then could be part of the EAP in the future. And that's what she's put.
Councillor McGee, could you send me that email so that we can try and add it to the Scrutiny Forward Plan?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Guy, I knew that somebody else had to come to.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Just a couple of areas that I think it would be really good to get members sort of up to speed with and to get your intake on, get your input into, would be just our communications and consultation approach. Just in terms, so I can get a colleague to talk you through what the approach of the council is, and also get some feedback around how we can perhaps develop that going forward. We've got some ideas, but I think it'd be really useful to show a bit more of the wiring as to what the consultation and engagement approach is and what the communications approach is for the council. I would say they're probably two separate areas, Chair. I think sort of the consultation and engagement would be one, communication would be the other, but I'd be happy to bring back something for discussion and debate on those.
Okay. Some things that I think are very important that we could do with looking at in some way, shape or form. One is cybersecurity itself. And the other probably goes into the comms. I was thinking of the website and the way the website is. And probably within that and within your comms is the methods of engagement that we have. And, well, I've got a few more, but I think that's probably enough to be going on with. And at some point, maybe in the autumn, it might be nice for customer services to come back to us, probably after the next phase of the CRM has been launched within the customer services, and have an update on how the CRM and telephone systems working within that. And, you know, I'm not trying to make this into scrutiny, but I am trying to have it as an informative process going forward. Wendy?
Yeah, I'd be very pleased to hear about the communication strategy and consultation engagement, because actually I don't think members are fully aware. I don't know what communications go out to whom and what consultations are sent out to, where they're sent, because I assumed consultations were sent to the town and parish councils. They're not, are they? But I think some may be. I was at a town council meeting the other day, and they received some consultations, but not all of them. So that would be really useful to understand.
Chair, I'd be very happy to.
Yeah.
Very happy. I won't actually go into that. We can show the wiring of what goes out, but I'd be very happy. I think that'd be really beneficial.
I think there's a piece of work being done as well, isn't there, with regard to trying to interface more with towns and parishes?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I could perhaps give a bit more information offline, Councillor. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, anything else? No? Well, in that case, I thank you very much for coming to this meeting. Thank you all those online, if there is anybody. And I close the meeting.